April 18, 1945. A stone farmhouse on the eastern edge of Waldmünchen, Bavaria. The pine forests are still holding winter cold despite the pale spring sun. The village has been shelled twice in the past week, and the smell of burned timber hangs in every street. 12 days from now, Adolf Hitler will be dead in a Berlin bunker. The war in Europe has perhaps 3 weeks left to breathe. But on this particular afternoon, in the stone cellar beneath a ruined farmhouse, 6 German officers are sitting in the dark, with their sidearms already placed on the floor, and the man pointing a rifle at them from the stairs does not yet know that one of those officers is about to make the worst decision of his life. Corporal David Levine was 23 years old. He came from the Brownsville neighborhood of Brooklyn, New York, the son of Polish Jewish immigrants who had arrived through Ellis Island in 1921 with $40 and a single leather suitcase between them. Before the war, David had been working the counter at his father's dry goods store on Sutter Avenue and taking night classes in mathematics at Brooklyn College. He was quiet, careful, and precise in the way that people become when they have grown up watching their parents rebuild a life from nothing. He enlisted in September 1942, 9 months after Pearl Harbor, and fought through the mud of North Africa and up the grinding length of the Italian peninsula before his unit crossed into Germany in the final weeks of the war. He had a silver star he never talked about, earned at the Rapido River crossing in Italy during a night that cost his company 41 men. His hands were steady, his voice was even. He had seen enough of the war to know that it was almost over, and he intended to survive it. Oberstleutnant Heinrich Brandt was 42 years old, a career Wehrmacht officer from an old Munich military family with 4 generations of service behind him. He was a tall, correctly uniformed man with close-cropped grey temples and the kind of rigid posture that comes from decades of believing that bearing is character. He had served in Poland and France in the opening months of the Russian campaign and had spent the last year in Bavaria commanding a rear area security battalion that had not seen serious combat since the autumn. He was a man who had spent his entire adult life inside a hierarchy that told him certain categories of men were beneath him, and he had accepted that hierarchy not with cruelty, exactly, but with the absolute ease of someone who has never once been asked to question it. He believed in order, he believed in rank, he believed in the structure of civilization as he understood it. He was about to surrender to someone his civilization had classified as subhuman, and he was not prepared to do it. By April 1945, the situation in southern Germany had become something close to organized chaos. American armored columns were pushing southeast through Bavaria at a pace that left entire Wehrmacht formations stranded behind the advancing line. Thousands of German officers were surrendering every day, some with relief, some with bitterness, some with the blank mechanical compliance of men whose war had simply run out. But in isolated pockets, especially among officers who had spent the last months insulated from the true scale of the German collapse, old habits of thought persisted. The ideology that had organized 12 years of German public life did not evaporate the moment a rifle appeared in a doorway. It persisted in the men who had lived inside it longest and questioned it least. Levine led his 3-man patrol down the cellar stairs with his M1 Garand levelled and his flashlight cutting through the dark. He identified the German officers in the corner, assessed their sidearms on the floor, confirmed they were not reaching for anything, and then gave the order in serviceable German he had picked up across 2 years of combat. Get up, hands visible, single file to the stairs. 5 of the 6 men complied immediately, their eyes tired and their movements careful and small. The 6th man did not move. Brandt sat with his back against the stone wall and looked at Levine for a long moment with an expression of cold, precise refusal. Then he spoke. "I will not surrender to you," Brandt said. "Bring me an officer." Levine kept the rifle steady. "I am the ranking man in this room," the corporal said. "You are my prisoner." Brandt looked at Levine's uniform, at his features, at the Star of David visible on the chain, at his collar, and his expression did not change. "I know what you are," the Oberstleutnant said, "and I will not place myself in the custody of someone like you." Bring me an Aryan officer, or I will not move from this floor." The 4 other captured German officers in the cellar stared at their own boots. Levine did not raise his voice. He told the other 5 prisoners to move up the stairs under guard, and then stood alone with Brandt in the cold dark, and told him one more time to get up. Brandt crossed his arms and waited. Colonel James Whitfield arrived at the farmhouse 20 minutes later. He was 37 years old, a career infantry officer from Augusta, Georgia, a hard-edged, pragmatic man who had commanded his battalion from Tunisia to the German border without a single interview in any newspaper. He was not a sentimental man, and he was not a man given to speeches. He had grown up in the segregated South, and he carried the specific complications of that upbringing with him everywhere he went. He had fought alongside Black American soldiers in Italy, and he had seen what they were capable of, and whatever he believed privately about race, he had learned over 3 years of war that the only hierarchy that mattered in the field was the one earned in the dirt. When Levine reported what had happened in the cellar, keeping his voice flat and his face still, Whitfield listened without expression. Then he walked down the cellar stairs himself. Brandt looked up with obvious relief when he saw the colonel's oak leaf clusters in the flashlight beam. He began to speak, began to explain that he had no objection to the American Army's authority, that he was prepared to surrender fully and formally, that he simply required the dignity of surrendering to a proper officer. Whitfield let him finish. Then Whitfield turned around, walked back up the stairs, and called Levine down into the cellar. He told the corporal to stand directly in front of the prisoner. Then he turned to Brandt and spoke in a voice that carried no heat at all, which made it considerably more frightening than if he had been shouting. "This soldier found you," Whitfield said. "This soldier ordered you to surrender, and you refused. This soldier has fought in 3 countries and has bled for this army while you were sitting in a basement. You will surrender to Corporal Levine. You will hand him your officer's identification. You will state clearly that you are surrendering yourself and your rank to his custody. And if you do not, I will note in my official report that you actively resisted capture, which carries consequences I imagine you would prefer to avoid at this particular moment in the war." Brandt opened his mouth once and then closed it again. He looked at Levine standing in the flashlight beam with his rifle at rest, and his expression absolutely unreadable. The Oberstleutnant stood up slowly from the stone floor, reached into his breast pocket, and held out his identification booklet with both hands. Levine took it. "I surrender to your custody," Brandt said, his voice stripped of everything it had contained an hour before. Levine accepted the document, marked the time in his field notebook, and walked Brandt up the stairs into the pale Bavarian sunlight. Whitfield never mentioned the cellar in his official after-action report. He filed a routine prisoner capture, 6 German officers, no resistance. He did not explain why. He did write about it once, in a private letter to his wife in Augusta, a letter she preserved, and that was donated to a university archive by their daughter in 2003. He wrote that he had done it not because it was regulation, and not because he was a particularly righteous man, but because he was tired. Tired of watching the world hand dignity to people who had not earned it, and withhold it from people who had. He wrote that Levine had not needed anyone to fight his battle for him. What the corporal needed was for the record to be correct. David Levine came home to Brooklyn in August 1945. He finished his mathematics degree, earned a teaching certificate, and spent 31 years teaching high school mathematics at Jefferson High School in East New York, where he was known for his precision, his patience, and his complete refusal to pass a student who had not genuinely earned it. He retired in 1979. He never spoke publicly about the war. He died in 2001 at the age of 79. His daughter, cleaning out his apartment afterward, found his silver star in a shoebox on the top shelf of his closet, still in the original leather case, never displayed. Heinrich Brandt was processed through an Allied prisoner of war facility near Regensburg and held until June 1945. He faced a denazification tribunal that autumn. His case was classified as a follower, the second lowest category of complicity, and he was assessed a fine and barred from public office for 4 years, which he returned to Munich, where he worked as a municipal records clerk until his retirement in 1968. He gave one interview late in his life in 1981 to a West German documentary filmmaker researching the final weeks of the war in Bavaria. When asked whether he had anything he wished he had done differently, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said he had been wrong about certain things, and that the wrong had been his, and that he had known it on the stairs of that cellar when the American corporal had walked him out into the light without a word of triumph. He died in Munich in 1989, the same year the wall came down. Some military historians who have studied the final phase prisoner captures in Bavaria have argued that Whitfield's decision was strategically insignificant, a personal gesture in a corner of a war that was already decided. Elagabalus didn't just want to act like a woman. They point out that forcing a formal surrender ceremony in a burned-out cellar changed nothing about the operational picture, and that Whitfield's energy was better directed at the actual fighting that still remained. Elagabalus didn't just want to opposite that the moments of record matter precisely because they happen inside systems that are otherwise indifferent to them, and that what Whitfield did that afternoon was insist that the war's outcome include a specific truth that would otherwise have been quietly erased. What is certain is that David Levine walked out of that cellar with a German officer's identification in his field notebook and a war that was 12 days from its end, and Elagabalus didn't just want to act like a woman, and he never once mentioned what had happened in that cellar to anyone he knew. If you had been in Colonel Whitfield's position, would you have done the same thing, or would you have taken the surrender yourself and moved on? Leave your answer in the comments. And if you want more stories about the moments inside the war that the official histories filed away without ceremony, make sure to subscribe.